Hey everyone. So a little while ago, I made this PCG tutorial that wasn't too beginner friendly. So I thought I'd remake it and make it more beginner friendly so anyone can come in and check it out and learn. So let's get into it. So I'm using Unreal Engine 5.5. So I'm going to click launch. Okay, once 5.5 launches, you're going to see this screen right here. You might want to go over to games and use third person. That way you get the mannequin. In my case, I already have a project created, so I'm just going to go find that, which is PCG Forest version 2, and click on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is do Control Space to open up the content browser again. V1 is the original that I created before this. So instead of doing V1, I'm going to right click here and go over to Level and name this V2. And then I will open up V2. You're going to see a bunch of stuff here. Actually, you might not, but if you played around like I just did, you will. This is basically just saving things. So just save selected, which is going to save all the changes I made. And then you're going to see this giant black hole of a level. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to bring in the environment. So go over to Window, go down to Environment Light Mixer, click on it, and you're going to have these parameters over here at the top. Just do create skylight, direction, sky atmosphere, volumetric, high fog, and then close. And now you have a world. Now, the next thing you want to do is bring in our landscape. So I'm going to go over to landscape, click on that. And then this green outline is showing you exactly what you're about to create. We don't need something this big. And it'll also tax you if I try and like build a PCG this large. So I'm actually gonna go down to maybe 25. Let's see how much that is. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm gonna go down to 25 by 25 by 100 and click create. So the first thing I'm gonna add in is our mannequin. So I'm gonna do Control Space, go to the top, type in mannequin, M-A-N-N, and let it load. I guess my mannequin isn't skinned. And then I'm just going to grab Manny and drop and drag and drop. This way I just have a scale reference for everything I'm about to create. And the next thing I'm going to do is go over to this little box of the plus, which I'm going to be using a lot. Click on this, go down to cinematic and add in our camera. If you right click on your camera, you're going to see this menu, go to pilot, and then you can pilot it. The other thing I'm doing to kind of change the speed. So right now I'm moving quick and then I can move slow. I'm still actually moving, but you just can't tell that much. I'm actually holding down, right click on the mouse and then scrolling down on the wheel. And if you look right up here, this is our camera. You can move it this way, but the fast way is to right click and then scroll up, see how it's going up, and then scroll down to scroll down. It's very nice when it comes to fine tuning the speed, especially when you're like trying to set up a camera and orient your shot. So I'm just going to have a good shot of our mannequin with the landscape so I can get a good idea of what it's going to look like. And then I can go over here to this eject button to stop moving the camera. And then I can actually click on the camera. You're going to see this down here and I can pin it on the screen. So now it stays. Now, the next thing I'm going to want to do is create some folders. So the first one is just going to be lighting. Next one is going to be cinema. And then I think that's all I need right now. I'm going to put the mannequin in cinema along with the camera, and then all the lighting is going to go in lighting. That way you just stay a little organized. Perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is go over here and go back to landscape. And this is how we're going to start building out our landscape. So since this is kind of capitalizing off of my first tutorial, which had the deer in the forest, I'm going to build my landscape in the same way as that one. But in that tutorial, I didn't really teach you how to do it. So here I'll teach you. So the first thing you want to do is go over to sculpt. And once you're on sculpt, I'm going to just click on the sculpt button. And then I can increase the brush size. So you have different brush types, which we're not going to play with. You have the tool strength, which just means if I put up to 100, you're going to see it just happens faster kind of thing. So let's go down to 0.1 again, and then brush size and brush fall off. Fall off is how, I guess, blended your action's going to be. So it's just going to blend it better. I would keep the fall off high. And the next one is brush size. I'm going to move the brush size to be a lot higher so I can play around with it quickly. And the idea here is I kind of want the landscape kind of growing across. So now I'm going to go over to smooth and just kind of smooth that out. And then the next one, back into sculpt, I'm going to use 500 for size. And I'm just going to start moving it around in like circular motions to kind of build up our scene. So this might take a while, but it offers a nice natural landscape. And we want our landscape to be kind of hilly on the sides. So just keep circling. I'll speed through this, and then I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so this is what I made. If you saw while I was doing it, I definitely increased the brush size and the tool strength to kind of get a more drastic effect. But now that that's done, I'm going to go one to flatten. Flatten is an interesting brush. It basically just flattens to the first landscape piece you click on. I'm going to use flatten to kind of create our trail. So let me go back down to maybe 250. You can use your human as a reference or your mannequin. I'm going to click here and kind of just dig a route through our landscape to kind of get it set up. And then the next one is go over to flatten to, again, make sure everything just looks clean and isn't like too obviously crafted. Flatten, again, it'll flatten to the first click landscape, which is why it's also destroying everything above it. I only want it like a gradual thing because I'm going to have the deer up on this little hill. And if it's too high, it will look weird with the trail kind of being forced to go up. And then the last bit here is the erosion brush. This causes the landscape to look a lot more natural with how it kind of falls. Um, this isn't necessary because a lot of it's going to be covered by foliage, but I do like adding this because it just makes a little more natural to the landscape. Because if you don't do this, it kind of looks like this type of landscape's more appropriate for like a desert, whereas erosion on a natural landscape is much more natural. All right, now that our landscape is done, the next thing we need to do is bring in our landscape material. So to teach it from scratch is going to take a long time. So just to make things easy, I actually have it downloadable via Gumroad. But the first thing we want to do before we get into that is go up here to edit, go down to plugins, and we need to enable some few things. So type in movie, and we can do the movie render queue. So you just click this little check and you'll see restart. Don't click restart yet though. The next thing we want to do is also PCG. So type in PCG and then do the procedural content generation framework, PCG beta. Click on that as well. And then you can restart your engine. While that's restarting, the next thing we're going to want to do is go over to the link in the description. And it's going to take you to this right here. All you want to do is type in 0 and then do I want this and then type in 0 again and click get. Once that happens, you're going to get this folder right here. Go over to download, and then you can download this wherever you want. I'm just going to download it in our downloads folder. The one issue with this download, and I couldn't get this fixed, is it has parentheses 1 parentheses, which Unreal Engine can't read. So make sure you delete the parentheses and just have it say landscape, and then click save. You can replace the one I already had since I tested it out. And then now, if your Unreal Engine already restarted and opened up, just shut it down one more time and then go over to your Unreal Engine folder via Windows. So this is what it's going to look like once you get over to it. This is your Unreal Engine folder. You want to open up content. And then in my case, I already had a folder created called Mr. Holt's Landscape. If you don't, you can actually create a folder here by just right clicking and adding in a folder. In my case, I already have one made. So I'm going to open this, go over to my main landscape, which is just how I have it organized. And then you can go to your downloads folder and then just drag and drop the asset into your folder like this. Again, make sure there's no spaces or the parentheses. Make sure it's just m_landscape or Unreal Engine will not know how to read it and it won't pop up. Okay, now that Unreal Engine's created, I'm just going to do control space to get to content browser and open up the level. And now we should have the movie render queue, the PCG, as well as our material. So if you do control space, go over to wherever you saved it. In my case, it's right here. You're going to see your landscape right here. And this is our landscape that we are using right here. So the first thing we're going to want to do now is to bring in the materials that we want for our landscape. In my case, I'm going to go over to Window and do Quixel Bridge. I guess there's a bunch of complaints between Fab and Quixel Bridge. Quixel Bridge is the easier spot, in my opinion, to get to Quixel stuff, because Fab, you can't really find a Quixel library. So I'm going to enter Quixel Bridge. And then the first thing we do is do Nordic. And then we can click on Services to get purely services. And I think it's actually Nordic Forest. And this one right here, Nordic Forest Ground Moss Course. You can go over here, select your quality. In my case, I'm just going to do highest, which is already downloaded, and then add it to my scene. And then the next one is going to be, let me go over down to local, since I already have mine done. And it'll be the Nordic Forest Route Course. Again, highest, and then add it to your scene. So now that that is done, what we're going to want to do is go back to our landscape material and right click it and do create material instance. Once the create material instance is done, you can open it up and you're going to see this screen right here. So everything here are parameters. Parameters basically mean I can switch any of these materials out for whatever I want. So in my case, I'm going to go over to base albedo, base ARD, and normal, and just keep checking them all on. We'll only be using 2 different materials for this scene, so these are the 2 you can use. And then, so turn them all on so they're all activated. And then if you do control space, again, your content browser will pop up here. Go over to the services you just brought in. In my case, it is going to be the mossy ground. And then just drag and drop everything in. I want this one to be the mid, so drag the albedo in, drag the ARD in, and drag the normal in. The next one is going to be the Nordic Forest Roots. So go to the top one, and same thing here. I know this is albedo just because I know the order. Albedo, the normal, and the ARD into your scene, and then click Save. Now, go over to your landscape material. So let me close this down. Landscape material. Hit your M landscape instance. Click on your landscape. And then once you click on your landscape, go down to this green box right here and click this arrow, and your landscape will be added. Do not freak out. The black is normal. Now that this is added, go over to landscape and then go over to paint. And you're going to see this right here. There are currently no target layers. Sometimes this pops up. It happens to me a lot. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't happen to you, just hold on. If it did happen to you, click these plus signs. Click it 3 times to get your layers. And then the layers are named after the material layers. So if you just click right up here and change this to base, and then do this mid. And then if you ever plan on using a top layer, you can do that. Just do top. And then now that these are all named, you just want to go over here to create layer info and do weight blended layer. And then you can save these wherever you want. In my case, I have a folder created. I'll just save it there. If it says info is already there, this is because I already had a landscape. So I just need to delete that. You should not have this issue because you didn't have it. So yeah, weighted blended layer, go over, click on it, save, and then just go across and do the exact same thing. Cool. So now we have our landscape in our scene. So to paint on our landscape, the first thing we want to do is do the giant moss. So I'm just going to click on this, increase the brush size, and then just do one giant paint. So the moss is on our entire scene. And then the next thing we do is go back here. And this is going to be what we use for our trail. So let me bring this all the way down to 250, which is the same size we used for our flattened trail. And I'm just going to paint this where our trail is supposed to be. So now We have our landscape painted on. Yes, it doesn't look that good, but the main issue right now is the fact that our tiling is incredibly small. So I'm going to go over to the instance, minimize, and just bring it up to this right-hand corner. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. There we go. And then I can now adjust things based on these parameters. So this is actually annoying. I'll just do it like this. Okay, so for the first one, we have tiling right here. So click that on. I'm gonna make this down to 0.2, which just judging by the feet looks much more natural. I'm actually gonna do 0.15. Yeah, I like that much more. And then same thing with the moss. You can go down to the moss, click on tiling and do 0.15. That looks much natural as well. Okay, so now we have our landscape material. The next thing I'm gonna do is just go over to Cinema, click on the camera and pin it so it is on our screen. And then I'm going to create a PCG folder up here. And I'm also going to create a PCG folder in our content browser. This is it right here. And then inside that folder, I'm just gonna right click, go over to PCG and do PCG graph. I'm gonna name this PCG underscore forest and then drag and drop it into our scene. And the next thing is drag and drop both of these into our PCG folder. So now you're going to see this giant box. In my case, I'm going to be moving our box over into the middle of our scene. And then let's increase the scale of it. I think 40 by 40 should be good. And then move it so it starts at the beginning and ends over there. I think I want it a little longer, so maybe 50. Nope, it's the wrong one. Go back. Let's do 60 on the x-axis. Okay, so with our PCG graph and our scene, the next thing is grabbing assets. So I use a mix of Quixel Bridge and Fab. So I'm going to grab all the assets now so you don't have to keep going back and forth. The first piece of assets are going to be leafy dandelions and then leafy weeds, if you would like those. They can also bring in some other assets as well. I have yellow flowers, which I need to add to my scene. And then I have mustard as well, which I can add to my scene. And then leafy or lily turf, add to my scene. Then these can all not join us. And then the next one would be Nordic forest tree log small. I'll add that to my scene. And then with that, we can now also go over to Fab. So let me go into Fab. And then in here, let's just type in maybe grass. We're just trying to find the Quixel library, which is partly why I don't like using it because it's kind of hard to find. So once you find, type in grass, you'll see this material right here and a little Quixel right up here. Click on that, and then this will bring you to specifically the Quixel library. So here, I'm going to actually type in European. And then you're going to find the European hornbeam. I would download this. This is what I use for our trees. And then you can also download any extra like bilberry, elderberry, stuff like that. I'm actually going to grab some bilberry, accept, and then it'll download. Mine is a little weird. Yours should work if you just kind of pull down. For some reason, mine doesn't do that. I have to like click on it and then go to add project, which is why I think a lot of people are kind of getting annoyed with how Fab works. But once that's done, you're in. And then now the other stuff is I'm going to do Nordic rock. And then there's a bunch of different rocks you can download. I'm going to be downloading the ones that are more mossy. So I have the Nordic forest cluster. You can download this, Nordic forest rock, Nordic forest cluster medium, medium rock, all these. And then the other ones that I'm going to be downloading are, let's do rocks just in general. And I'm going to be downloading these rocks as well. And then I'm also going to be doing, say, branches. I'm going to be downloading these dry branches. So let me click on that and add to project because mine is weird and I have to go through all this to get it. There we go. The next one is, so you can get some oak branches, stuff like that. Really whatever you feel is going to help fill out your scene. I'm also going to be doing some bark. So let me do mossy bark, add this one to my scene, accept, and then one more, add a project, accept, and then leaves. You can choose these if you want. I know there's also this dry leaf material, which I really like, so I'm going to bring this one in as well. Add a project, accept. And then I think that is everything I'm going to be using in our tutorial today. Okay, so now that you have all your assets downloaded, we can start getting into the PCG part of this. So let's go back and open up our PCG forest, drag it down. And the first thing we're going to want to do is get landscape data. So I'm going to right click and do get landscape and get landscape data. And then this one is going to go over here to a surface sampler. So if I click D, that is debug, and that is going to show all the points in which a static mesh will appear. So just to kind of teach this really quickly, I'm going to do a static mesh spawner, and then let me grab, so if you click on your static mesh spawner and go to this plus sign, and go down here, and then down again, you can add in your static mesh here. So I'm going to do control space, go over to Megascans, filter for our static mesh, and maybe let's find, do I have a rock I can use? Is it in Fab? Yeah, here's the rocks. Let me just add in a rock right here. And if I undo this, you're going to now see that everywhere our little boxes were, if I click D again, these are all where our boxes are. If I undo, you're going to see we have rocks in every single area where our debug was occurring. So this All right, sorry about that. My dog just went crazy. Okay, so each of these little boxes is showing you a point in which a mesh will be added in, and we need to basically adjust these boxes so we get the desired look and feel that we are going for. So I'm going to do Command or Alt and click on the in to disconnect it. The next thing we want to do is do a attribute filter. And then the attribute filter is going to do something very special. So if I click D here, and then click D here, and then if you click on the service sampler and click A, and then go down to PCG component, you're going to see all these different parameters that are basically attributes of all the boxes that you see here. If you go all the way to the right, you're going to see base, mid, and top, which is the name of our materials. So I can filter where these boxes are based on the material the boxes are on top of. So right here, I can then go over and let me drag U inside filter to transform points. Transform. I can never find these things. There we go. Transform points. And I'm going to do D on transform points. So now that I have debug on transform points, you're going to see I don't have any boxes, and that's because the attribute filter hasn't been designed yet, which means it's filtering everything out. So the first thing we want to do is go to an operator, which is greater than. So that's fine with me. And then I know that this is the mid layer and this is the top layer. So let's do greater than the top layer. Or sorry, the base layer. So we can do greater than base as our target attribute. So type in base. And now you're going to see that this is only going to lay boxes or rocks in this case on the base layer. But we don't want that. We want it on everything else. So now if I just go over here, and then you can also change the threshold. So use constant threshold. So now this is what we got. And if I change the value to say 0.5, the threshold is greater than. So first we want to do is swap it. So it's everything else. And then I can do maybe 0.9 to see how it's starting to melt a little into our trail. So we actually want to bring it lower. So let's do 0.1 to make sure nothing is now on the trail. So everything is going to be on our moss. So that is what we're looking for. And then the next thing we brought in, so we have the get landscape data. I'm going to click A to get rid of the debug. We have service sampler. We have the attribute filter. So just to explain all this, the get landscape data is just getting the landscape data. The surface sampler is then surfacing that data and giving you the points. The attribute filter is then filtering for specific attribute, which is the material. And then transform points is going to be what we're going to use to really alter the way these boxes look. Because right now, everything, if I just debug, all these rocks are in the exact same direction, perfectly aligned, and it just doesn't look good. So the transform points is how we're going to fix that. So I'm going to go back to the debug, and let's go over here to the parameters. And the first thing we want to do is rotation min and max. We can do 360. So between 0 and 360, they will now randomly arrange itself. And the next one is the scale. So they're not always going to be the same scale. We can do maybe 0.5 to 1 for now. And then we can adjust this to kind of make it the way you want it to look towards the end. So yeah, that is how we're going to get that. And then the next thing we want to do is actually go back to surface sampler. And this is going to be what allows us to change the points that are being selected. So I can bring this down to say 8 and 8, which is going to change the size of the points and where they are designed. And then I can also increase or decrease the amount of points that we're going to have on our screen. So if I can do, like, say 8, there's going to be an insane amount. And don't do this, because if you do, it's just going to crash your computer. And then let me go down to 0.05. And now they're much less. So the next thing we're going to want to do is bring in different materials to help populate this. So I'm going to start breaking these up by rocks and plants and different stuff, so they're not all connected to each other. So this first one is going to be rocks. So I'm going to click C, and name it rocks. And then I'm going to go over here to the static mesh and start adding different static meshes to appear in this area. So the next one is going to be go into the static mesh, go over to static mesh entries, and do plus 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 to kind of add more. And in this case, I'm going to just keep adding different static meshes to our scene. So I'm actually going to go to this one so I have a bigger area to look for. So there's one rock right there. Then we have this rock as well. This rock, which is a little messed up. Oh no, it's looking good. And then we can do this final one, which, oh, we don't have a final one. Okay, so these are going to be the rocks we use. Do we have one over in Megascans, maybe? Weird, I don't think everything downloaded for me. Okay, I was missing some assets, but I didn't add any more rocks in. So this is what it's looking like now. And then we can also adjust the size of these rocks. Some of them are quite large, which I don't really want. We can either get rid of them or change the size. Let's see how this looks if we adjust the size. Let's go maybe 0.25 and 0.75. That looks good. Some of these rocks, are they floating or it just looks weird? That one's floating. I think I'm going to get rid of this guy. So maybe let's find what rock that is. Nope. Yep. And then if you click this, it'll just reset the value. There you go. Click there. It'll reset the value. And then to make sure it gets populated in that area, you can click right here, this little arrow, and go to delete. And then now new rocks will populate in that area, which looks much better. So now that our rocks are in, the next thing we want to bring in is start bringing in some plants. So for that, I can go back over to the PCG forest, and then I can copy and paste. Let me make this larger so you can kind of follow. And then after they're copy and pasted, I'm going to go into here. But there's going to be one main issue using this route, which you just need to look out for, which might be confusing for someone who hasn't done this before, is since I just copied and pasted, every single surface sampler is going to be the exact same. So notice how it's surfacing the exact same area as our other rock PCG graph. So what we want to do is, one, we can change the seed. So changing the seed will make it new. Also, it is connected, so it's populating new rocks. And then the next one we can do is also change the points in which they're going to appear. In my case, I'm going to make it 0.1 since this is going to be some grass. And then I can also make this 8 so we don't have giant poles. So now with that done, we can name this maybe weeds, comment weeds. And then I can go over here and click this little trash can to get rid of everything and start adding new ones in. And then I'm just going to add in the weeds that we brought in earlier. So with that, let's go over to Megascans, static mesh. Actually, let's do it on this one so it's larger. And then just bring in some leafy weeds. And more leafy weeds. And then maybe a different type of leafy weed. And another different type of leafy weed. That way, when I attach you and then click on the source sampler and click D to get rid of all the buttons, I now have leafy weeds popping up throughout our scene, which are very minor, and I think we can do more without really ruining our scene. So let me go over to the source sampler. Let me do maybe 2. There we go. That looks a lot more natural in my opinion. So now that that is done, we can add in trees. And to do that, we can do the exact same thing we did before, which is copy and paste. And then get the landscape data. And we can cover U and do C, trees. And again, delete. And then go over here to the source sampler, click D, so we are getting the right surface sampled. Actually, better one is probably transform points. That way we see with the attribute filter added in. And then again, let's maybe bring you down to 0.025. It might be too little, so maybe just 0.25. I like that. And then we can increase the size of you to 20 since we're doing trees. So let's do 20, 20, 20. So we get a better idea of what we're looking at. It's still a lot of trees, I think. So let's do maybe 0.1. All right, I think I'm going to go with this, and we can adjust after we see what it looks like. So again, I deleted everything, so let's do plus, 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 maybe 3 different types of trees. And let's bring in our trees. So right here, we can go over to European Hornbeam and just start adding in your trees. Other thing that I've done with all my meshes, which you might want to do as well, is click on one, shift click on the other to click them all, go over to Nanite, and make sure Nanite is enabled. In this case, it is enabled on all of them because there's 0 meshes I can enable. I would enable Nanite on everything. It just will make everything perform better. So now that that is enabled, I'm going to go over to the descriptor and add in our trees. Okay, now that all our trees are populated, we can go back into the PCG. So the first thing I'm going to notice, or first thing you're going to notice, is it is aligned to the landscape, which is making things look kind of weird and jagged in different areas. So to fix that, we can go over to transform points and do absolute rotation, which means it'll be based on the planet, so absolute to landscape. The next one we can change is, now that it's absolute, you can see it's not laying completely flat. So we're going to have to change the offset to make sure all of these trees are where they should be. So a good way of going about this is maybe, I don't really need to fix the ones back there, but maybe pick a part of your landscape that is in scene and also has a good like uphill. So you know you're getting them all. So I'm going to pick this area. Then I'll go over to the offset min and max. I'm going to go over to max and do negative 10 and negative 10. And ooh, this one's just barely clipping. So maybe let's do negative 15 and negative 15 for my scene. That way you can now see that none of them are now sticking out of the ground. They're all below the ground, which is what we want. I'm going to click D, and this is how our scene is looking now with the trees in our scene. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is change the size of the trees. So to do that, I can go back to transform points. And let's make these from 1 to 1.25. So we get some nice tall trees, which I like much more. And then the other one we can do, since these transform points for the grass is also being affected, I'm actually going to change U to being 1 or actually let's do 0.75 and 1, which is going to make our grass larger as well. Sorry, it's kind of like hidden in the corner, but yeah, I'm just making the transform points of the weeds is really what I meant to say. So let me close that and get a better look at our scene. So the sun is definitely not where we want it. So to change that, I can click up at directional light, which is our sun. And then I'm going to do E to get rotation, and I'm going to have it kind of shooting through. So I'm going to rotate it so it's shooting through, right? Possibly there. And then also, again, if you want more fine tuning, I can up click this and kind of adjust it how I want. I'm curious how that looks. That doesn't look too bad. I like that. And then I can also go over to environment height fog, click on that. And if I go down, I can click on volumetric fog, which is going to give me a lot of nice volumetric fog that reacts well with the light. And then again, I can adjust this to kind of see how it's going to look. Sorry, that's the fog. If I click back here, so that's how the fog is going to react. But if it's cutting through our scene, yeah, you're going to get some nice light leaks like this. So it really depends on your scene. I might make this change or decision later down the road, but for now, this is looking pretty good to me. And then the next thing I'm gonna want to do is probably reduce the trees a little bit. I like the forest, but it might be a little too much. And again, these are all easy things to quickly change. So just go to transform points, or sorry, surface sampler under trees. And then I'm just gonna make you maybe 0.075, which is gonna offer some more light to come through. Let me do 0.05 for now. No, that's too less. So 0.75. And then close. So this is looking pretty good. So now that we have that done, we can start getting ready to adjust how our trail is going to look as well. And then we can also do like wholesale approaches for the entire scene. So no longer filtering for our attribute, which would be the material. So let's enter the graph, and I'm going to do another copy paste just so I don't have to recreate everything. And then for this, I'm going to go down and copy, and let's do trail branches or trail leaves. Let's do trail leaves. Click. We can go in here to source sampler. I'm going to make this 0.01. We can also click D to kind of see how many there are. Looks like none because we are on the wrong area. So, oh, I didn't click D. There we are. And then the attribute filter, if we just go over to the inverse, it is now putting trees up. So let's actually go back here and delete everything so we're not getting trees. Oh, up here. There we go. And then now I realize it is much less than we want. Since it's a small area, it's not adding a lot. Let's add more to our small area. So it looks like it's kind of doing everything, not just the attribute. So we got to make sure the attribute is aligned a little better. So I'm going to do base, and then maybe let's do 0.9, see what that does. Doesn't change too much. Oh, we're not on the attribute filter, which is kind of important. That looks good. So maybe we can get the attribute filter to be, okay, so if I increase it, so 0.9, but if it was 1, no, 0.9. So we have base greater than, less than, greater than, 0.8, 0.7, and then let's add more in. So let's do 1. There we go. Now that is nice and evenly spread out on our scene, which is what we are hoping to get. And then we can reduce it probably to 0.5. And then let's change the points to maybe 5, 5, and 5, since we are trying to add in little blocks. So now that is done, we can go back over here. I'm also going to change the seed just to add some variety in there. And then I'm going to go over here to static mesh spawner and start adding in, start adding in some twigs and branches and other stuff for the bottom of our trail. And then the offset we had set up earlier is what is messing with this. So I can just go in here and change the offset to being 0 and 0 because I am taking the trees, which is not what we want. We want it sit on our screen. That is looking good, but a lot of these are unfortunately glitched, which I will teach you how to fix. Okay, so for now, let's keep it like this. And then if you have this glitch where it is dark, it's a little annoying, but I do have a fix for it. So let me undebug. And then you're going to see this blackness on all of these. I'm not sure why this is happening in the sense of why Fab, when you download from it, it causes this issue. But what's happening is Megascans has a very specific material setup. So if I click on, just go to any of the ones that are having the issue. In this case, I know I'm using this twig, so I'm going to click on this mesh right here. It's going to bring me to this screen, and then I have this material. Let me click on the material, and it's going to bring me to this screen. So the main issue is this parent material is the incorrect parent material. So I'm going to click on this and go down to M underscore MS, which stands for material underscore megascans. I'm going to go over to MMS foliage material, click on that, and then it's going to give me this new material, which is not what we want, but it'll look better. So let me click all these all the way down, and then now 3D, and try and find the branches. So in my case, it's dry branches, high quality, and you're going to see this right here. I'm going to just go 1, 2, 3, save, close. Now, if you look right here, this branch is now no longer black like these ones are. So it is a little annoying that this happens, but at least I know the fix for it. The next thing we're going to want to do actually is turn on our displacement to make sure that our scene is looking good, because we want to make sure that all the materials are being placed correctly with a displaced ground. So if I just click on here, go over to landscape and turn you on, that should work. The next one, just to make sure, is click on the landscape itself, go down to displacement scaling, enable displacement fade, all this stuff. Just make sure it's all enabled. I have the displacement set to 0.1. That's probably where you want yours set so it doesn't go crazy. Save, exit, and then right here, just click build data. And there you go. That is our displaced ground that is blending in very nicely with our moss. So yeah, that's looking and laying down nicely, which is what we were hoping was occurring. So I think we can increase this a little. So let's go back and open our PCG graph, bring it over into this corner, go over to service sampler, and let's make it points, or let's just make it 0.85, which is going to increase the amount on our scene, maybe just 1, which is looking a lot more natural for what we're going for. Maybe 5. There we go. Okay, cool. And then the next one I'm going to want to do, so I'm going to rename this one to be, let's do trail branches. And then, okay, and then capital B, so it looks nice. If you would like to work with me, there we go. And then I can copy and paste one more time. Bring you down. Nope. Bring, okay, zoom in and bring you over to surface. And you are going to be our surface leaves. So C, trail leaves. Nice. Go over here, exit out of U, plus, 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 and let's add in our leaves. Mega scans, static mesh. Is this where I downloaded it? It might have been, yeah, it's through Fab. So let me go down to Fab. This is one of those things that didn't download as well. We shall find out. Nope, they're right here. So add in, and let's go down to the next one. So now we have leaves on our scene as well. Now, the next one we want to do is start adding more foliage to the rest of our scene to kind of fill it all out. And then we can make final touches from there. So now we had all these branches added in for our trail. We want to also add them in for our main area as well. So I'm going to drag you down. So all of you is staying with our trail. And then I'm going to bring you up here. And let's add you in. Add you in as well. Then I can actually delete this attribute filter and then copy the attribute filter we're using before. So life is easy instead of having to recreate. So now this is based on the attribute filter before. And if you look around, you're going to see all of these are everywhere. But the one main change is this is still set to absolute like the trees are. So we can go over in here and actually shut off absolute rotation for both. And now that I know that, I want to just make sure it doesn't cause an issue for here, even though it's flat. Let me change off absolute rotation as well. So now all of our stuff is laying nice and neatly on our ground. So now that that is done and we have the leaves kind of scattered around, I'm going to actually go in and add one more piece, which is going to be some plants, some larger plants that are kind of above, and then we can play around with final changes. So let's name you plants. Zoom in here, go to static mesh, undo everything, and we can go add, add, add. And now we can add in some fun different foliage throughout our scene. Okay, so now we have all the assets in. We can make changes so things look and populate a little better. The last one I definitely want to do is add in a log. So I'm just going to go over to Window, go to Fab, type in grass so I can get over to the Quixel bridge. Oh, not like that. There we go. Click on you, go to Quixel, and then just type in log. Then we're going to get some cool logs here. I think I'm going to go with maybe this one. Oh, wait, I have to click on it or it won't download. Add a project. Thank you. Yes. And then let's go back and add in this one as well. Add a project. Yes. Accept. And then I just add the logs into our static mesh spawner. Okay, now that everything is in our scene, the last thing is really just making final touches. That can be anywhere from playing with the transform points, increasing the amount of assets throughout the scene, or decreasing, changing the size, really just trying to art direct everything by playing with the parameters you set up in the PCG. So I will just speed through this. If you're interested in what I'm doing, you can just pause as I'm speeding through. So yeah, see you on the other side. Okay, so now we're going to bring in our last piece of assets. To do that, go over to Window, down to Fab, open up Fab, and then in the search bar, let's look up Animal Variety Pack. And this is the first one up on the top left. Hopefully it's still free. It was when I got it, but add this to your project to get the deer. And then now that it's added to the pack, I'm going to go over to the clearing that we created. Control space, bring up the content browser, go over to the animal variety pack folder, and bring in our stag. So go up to the camera and pin it. That way we know it's in the scene. So I'm just going to do some small adjustments here. Make it a little larger as well. And then turn it over. There we go. Or move it over. And then I'm going to pilot the camera. I can get rid of the mannequin now since we don't really need it, and set up our final shot. And then now I kind of want the light to switch up, so I'm going to play around with that as well. I kind of do like evening light and having like a golden background to our stag. We're working in digital film, focal length. I can change the aperture to 1.6, and then I'll have it focus on the deer. You can also switch focus mode over to tracking. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then if you go over to this little eyedropper and click on the mesh, it'll populate with the stag. So now no matter where the camera is, it'll focus on the stag. Makes things a lot easier when it comes to fine tuning. Okay, so now up at the top left on the clapperboard, click on that and go to add level sequence. And then I'm going to name this ls underscore main, ls for level sequence. And then I'm going to open that up. You can go to the add button, add your camera, and then I'm going to add in the stag as well as the two things you want to animate. For the stag, it actually comes with animation. So when you see animation, click the little plus next to it. And then I need to find the exact animation we want to use. I skipped ahead so you didn't have to wait for me searching. The one we want to use is called Idle Look Around. So animation, deer stag, idle look around. And we'll have the stag kind of eat, and then he'll raise his head and look around, which fits our scene really well. So I'm going to elongate our scene based on our animation. Right now, I'm just going to move it to 500. And then if you actually right click the animation, go over to properties, you can slow the animation down, which makes it last longer. So I'm going to go over to play rate. It says fixed play rate right now. And right next to it, you're going to see 1.0. So keep it on fixed play rate. And then for 1.0, I'm going to do 1.65. And then it'll kind of restart. So now he's moving slower at 1.65 speed of the animation. I think the animation loops, but I can end it at the end of the animation, which is about, what, 354 frames. And then I'll move the playhead over to that. We'll work within that space. Next is the camera. For the camera, we're going to do very subtle movements. So all I'm going to do is adjust the placement of the camera. So that is done by using transform. So you can click the little plus sign, which is going to add a keyframe, which marks the camera's position during the timeline. And then I'm going to move the camera forward and click the plus sign again. And the camera will move between both the keyframes in our scene. And then I'm going to highlight and move it to linear. Cubic is basically going to mean it starts slow, ramps up, and then goes slow again. Whereas linear, it's going to stay at the same speed the entire throughout the entire clip. This works, but I don't like how the camera's falling down. So I'm going to click on the back end and lower the camera. Again, I'm fine tuning it by holding down or right clicking the mouse and scrolling down so it slows down the camera movement so I can really lock in how I want my scene to look. So now that we have that done and our scene is pretty much finished, we can get started on making a lot of the final adjustments when it comes to the lighting. So I'm going to go in here into lighting in my lighting folder, then go over here to the box with the plus sign, and let's go down to volumes and let's type in post. And then let's do post process volume. Let's drag it into the lighting. And then the first thing we're going to do in the search bar is do bound. And then click infinite extend bound. Close that out. And then let's go over to exposure. So EXP. And min and max can be both set to 0. And then we can adjust from here. I think this actually might be a little too low. So let's just do -1 and -1. All right, let's do -3 and -3. You can kind of just adjust to see where you want it to be. Seems like -5 might be our winner. I want it to be a little dark, so let's do -4. There we go. So now when we play our scene, that's what we're looking at. Perfect. So now let's go over to our folder. So go into content browser and click on content. I'm going to right click here, go to blueprint class, and then let's do all classes. And you want to type in camera shake. So camera shake, and you're going to see camera shake base. Click on that, select. Let's name this, dun 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 dun. Okay. So now that that is done, let's go over and name this BP underscore camera shake. And then let's open it up. Look at this beautiful graph. Close it back down and open it up again. And then now we can do camera shake. So let's do root camera shake pattern. Switch this to Perlin noise, which is a nice little preset that is pretty natural. And then timing needs to be 0 because if it's at 1, it will only go for 1 second. But if you put it 0, it is infinite. And then I think we can just do 0.5 across to start. And then we can close, go over here and add camera shake. So click the plus sign on the camera, go to camera shake, and then let's bring you down and make sure camera shake is going for our entire scene. And then now if I go back and click play, our camera has shake throughout our scene. So I'm going to make some final adjustments and then I'll show you my final render. And now the final touches have been made. My main changes were just actually decreasing the attribute filter. So the surrounding foliage would enter closer into the trail. And then other than that, I actually just added some trees on this back line here just to add a little more depth or I guess density in the background. But other than that, that is our full scene. So now that that is all done, the last thing is just rendering this. The rendering settings I use are actually pretty simple. For this, all we need to do is go over to this clapperboard right down here, make sure the 2 dots are on movie render queue, open that up, and then we're going to click on unsave config. We can get rid of the JPEG sequence, and let's do anti-aliasing in settings.exr and game overrides. Game overrides is pretty much going to max our settings. Anti-aliasing, in this case, you can do 6 and 6. It'll give you some pretty good results without actually, I guess, overpowering your system. .exr can be as it is. And then in output, just choose the folder you want to output. You can change the file name if you want. If not, it's just going to be a sequence name and the frame number. And then lastly, output resolution. You can do whatever you want here. I personally do 255, 550, and 1440, which is like 2.5K. And yeah, just click accept and it'll start rendering your scene. So I hope you guys like this tutorial. Please like, subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Definitely wanted to have this tutorial be more beginner friendly. So hopefully this all helps you guys out. And with that, I will see you guys on the next one.